Hi everyone, I'm Susan Birch and welcome to another A Health Detective podcast. And today I have a very special guest. Her name is Jessica Cox. Jessica was born different, but that has never stopped her setting and achieving any goal she has in her life. She found she had hidden assets of determination, courage, and willpower. Jessica is a public speaker, a mentor, and a coach. She's also a pilot and has the rank of third degree black belt in Taekwondo, and she's the founder of Possible Thinking. And what makes Jessica different is she was born with no arms. And she has achieved all this by believing that anything is possible. So Jessica, thank you so much for coming. And I'm really looking forward to sharing your story and hearing all your wonderful insights.
Glad to be on.
Would you like to start just by telling us a little bit about your early years and, where all this started?
Yes, I was born without arms, and since day one, I'll have to admit it was hard in the beginning because as a child and starting to develop into an adult, I compared myself to others, and it was very hard to be the different one. And it really made me angry and frustrated at times. And that whole belief that I could do anything, though, was really from the beginning, because I didn't think of myself as not having arms. I knew I was different. And that part is what bothered me. But as far as believing that I could do anything, that started from the onset, and having phenomenal parents who encouraged me that I could do anything.
Yeah, so your parents popped you into, I hate this word, but, a normal school or a traditional school, not a school for someone, with different,
Mm-hmm.
And how was that? Was that a blessing and a challenge, or?
It was probably a good idea for my parents to, first of all, they didn't have the option of giving me a specialized school because I grew up in a small town, and they knew that I was going to have to face the world eventually and learn how to advocate for myself, to learn how to deal with how the world reacts to my difference. And it was hard, I'm sure, at the beginning, bringing me to kindergarten and first grade, but I think they made a very good decision to do that, because I needed to eventually fend for myself, and not just in the physical aspect, taking care of my own physical needs, but also in regards to the emotional strain to cope in a world where being different is hard. Having a disability, or what people consider a disability, which I never saw it as such, and I appreciate you, Susan, not describing it as such as well, but being in a world that labeled people with disabilities, or the people were incapable because of differences. And I had to eventually fend for myself and learn how to advocate. So it was good that I started school at a very young age in a public school setting with no special attention, but just like any other child.
Yeah, that's, I can only imagine the challenges because, being born differently from you, and that I have all my limbs, but I know the challenges that I faced and the challenges that so many other people face, that we faced during those years. And then you had this extra layer upon that. And do you think you were born resilient, or did you learn it through your life, or is it a combination of nature and nurture?
I think it's fair to say it is a combination, because resilience, it was required of me to survive naturally, being without both arms and having to do things a lot longer to be able to figure out a new way to do it without arms and do them with my feet instead. And that resilience was built in me at a very young age. But at the same time, my mother was an immigrant from the Philippines. And when she came to the United States, my father's an American, my mother was an immigrant. who came from the Philippines, and she really had to be resilient to pursue her dreams of coming from poverty, because she was in a very impoverished family. So for her to be resilient enough to break through those challenges and get a college degree and then become a nurse and then immigrate to the United States, it took a certain level of resilience, and she was born with all of her limbs. So that was ingrained in me, her ability to face adversity in a different way, in addition to my own being born without arms and having to be resilient because I had to learn to be independent, and it took a lot more energy and effort.
Mm, mm. So I read that you had I'm not sure what you call them, artificial arms.
Yes.
Yeah. Up until you were a teenager, and then you decided, the heck with this, you were just going to get rid of them and just get on with life.
Yes, it's interesting. It's really hard for me to explain to people who have two arms, and that's their basis of understanding, that their life through their arms is their normal. And so you would see someone without arms and have pity and think, well, how on earth do they do it? They don't have the arms that I absolutely need to survive. But in reality, this is all I've ever known from the beginning. How can I miss something I never even had? So that's the understanding I came from, which is why when I was presented with prosthetic limbs, artificial limbs, it was a very foreign entity. As I said earlier, this is my normal. And so when I had something that was made out of plaster and metal, and I wore them like a jacket to school every day, it was very foreign for me. I actually resented them. I just wore them because it was required and advised that I learn to use them as a young person if I wanted to use them as an adult. But since the moment I first put them on, I didn't like them. There was never a time that I enjoyed wearing prosthetics because I was always faster, more efficient. It felt better to use my feet because I could feel if something was hot or cold or smooth or rough. And they were wired to my brain already by the age of 3 when I was first presented with a prosthetic limb. And many people in my same shoes say the exact same thing. They were forced to wear artificial arms, but they chose not to. And I think where I was being advised, meaning my parents, they were very much advocating prosthetic limbs. So I was almost at a disadvantage because as a young person, you do what the adults tell you to do because you assume they know what's best for you. And in that situation, again, it was coming from the basis of understanding from someone who had arms their whole life. And they would want the best for a child who doesn't have the arms, instead of coming from someone who's lived life without arms and perhaps says something differently about it. I didn't meet anyone without arms like myself until I was 18 years old. So I spent my whole childhood not knowing if there was anyone else out there like me who could understand that and who could advocate for my opinion as a young person that I didn't like them.
I remember
seeing like the prosthetic limbs.
I remember seeing a lady on telly who was the thalidomide victim. I think in Barbara
Barbara Gira, yes.
Yeah, I remember seeing her. I had just started, my own family and had my own children. And I remember sitting there watching her change nappies with her feet, and I was so inspired, and, it's quite hard. It's quite challenging. And I'm sure you, have spent a lifetime of, it's challenging for people to see and not accept you, but challenging to accept that you can live your life without arms and that is actually perfectly normal for you. And that was something I felt quite challenged by with Barbara, amazed and inspired, but made me really think about my own personal opinion of what is normal and what is acceptable, and why do we all have to be the same, and the huge contribution that she made to the world, and understanding. And I still feel very touched by her story. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that she could do that. She could be that example to really help people see beyond what they're conditioned to see. So I think that's wonderful.
And I think with you, the obvious things with you are, your intelligence, and you're so articulate, and, once again, you bring this wonderful energy and knowledge and inspiration and creativity to the world. And, even in the best of us, even in those of us who feel the best and have the best intentions, it is still quite confronting.
For sure. I can only imagine, I've been very fortunate in a way that I was very sheltered from, I guess, what could have really put a damper on my what I bring to the table, my energy. And because I feel like in a way I was sheltered and taken care of by a wonderful family and a wonderful community, naturally there were moments where people came into my life and brought that negative energy, that negative outlook, and left an impression of trauma or negativity. And I was so lucky, though, to go through most of my childhood unscathed for the most part. As I tell people, I probably can count maybe 5 times that I remember being made fun of, to the point that it's still in my memory bank. And for that few times, for someone who's, it's totally different without arms, it could have been relentless bullying. It would have been in other situations, maybe another part of the country. I could have been in a different community. It could have been a more closed knit, kind of sheltered community where acceptance and seeing someone who's different wasn't a part of the norm. But I grew up in a very military town where there were many transients, people coming and going from other countries, and people seeing the world. And so they had that perspective of seeing things that were different, that they weren't just sheltered in a small town growing up with, only their immediate family and few friends. I grew up in a community that saw a lot of the world. So seeing me wasn't as shocking. And seeing me with my difference, yes, there were moments of immediate curiosity, but it wasn't as bad as it could be, I should say, because I grew up in a part of the country, a part of the world that was accustomed to having differences and different experiences, different cultures, and respecting that. So I feel fortunate. I think it was a good thing that I grew up in that environment, because it allowed for better acceptance and less bullying than had I been in a small town where people are kind of more closed-minded.
And, really, bullying is, people of all different types get bullied. And, it's really just an excuse that somebody else has to, make themselves feel better, or whatever their reason is. And there doesn't actually have to be a really sound reason for the bullying, does it? There is never a sound reason for the bullying.
Mm-hmm.
So I really want to get on and talk about your, your foundation, your business, Possible Thinking, and yeah, let's get into what you bring to the world, and how you do your work, and how you teach people to accept themselves, make the best of their lives, and, change their mindset about themselves, and believe that they too can think, have possible thinking.
Yes, I need to probably clarify, Susan, that I have a for-profit company that has been now in business for going on 18 years, and a nonprofit that serves people with disabilities that has been inspired out of the advocacy work that I've done around the world, but that's a fairly new nonprofit at 5 years old. So the for-profit is what I do for a living. I'm a speaker by profession. I get paid to walk on stage and share a message, whether it be a corporate event, whether it is a conference, whether it's just an internal event within a corporation. I come in to share my message and I leave, and then I get paid to do so. And everything I do on the day-to-day basis is gear up for those type of events, to market to those type of events, and put myself out there so that people know and are aware of the services I provide as a speaker, as a workshop conductor, as someone who also can be available for coaching. And so that's how I get by. My livelihood has been being a speaker now, and for almost 20 years, and it's been wonderful. It's taken me to 27 countries around the world. My nonprofit is a work of passion, a work of giving back and empowering those with disabilities. So that's where I do some of the more of the non-paid work, where I'm there to help champion the cause that disability doesn't mean inability. And so between those two, I stay pretty darn busy.
I know, I've been trying to connect for a little while, and you're like, oh, I'm in a hotel room, or oh, I'm in an airport. So it's been pretty amazing. And I'm like, oh, you're everywhere, you're traveling all the time.
It's been an adventure, I'll put it like that.
So I want to talk about your philosophy about collecting the baggage of life, because I think there's a story in there that you can share that could possibly be really helpful for listeners, and a really good reminder for me as well.
I love the way you put it. You put things so beautifully. I love that term, baggage of life, because we all have our baggage, no matter who we are. Some of us have invisible challenges that others are not aware of. Some of us have very overt challenges that everyone's aware of when they see that I don't have arms, but they don't realize that my not having arms are not my greatest challenges. Some of those challenges are invisible as well, like many have. So naturally, as I shared a little bit about being forced to wear prosthetics and artificial limbs, and in my opinion, being required to conform to what people consider the norm, really put I think it put it almost like it dampened a little bit of my spirit, because now even my husband says sometimes maybe my chip on my shoulder is when I talk about the prosthetic limbs and how resentful I am that for 11 years I was forced to wear them. And for me, the longest time I was very angry about that, as to why I wasn't embraced from the beginning, which I was embraced from as an infant, but not embraced at the age of 3, with my opinion of not wanting to wear them, and knowing that I'm whole and complete without them. And for a long time, I shared the story of being in 8th grade and 14 years old and finally giving up my fake arms, regardless of what people thought. But those experiences of growing up, being forced to wear them, really dampened my spirit and made me feel resentful in a way sometimes for what that did to my life. And obviously now it's been a wonderful story to help others break free of their own artificial limbs, in a metaphorical sense, their own obstacles or whatever it is that they feel like they have to put on in order to be accepted. And so it has become one of my most powerful stories on stage. But at the same time, it's part of my baggage. And it's something that I have to watch myself sometimes too, when some of those feelings come up, when people with prosthetic questions about, why don't you wear prosthetics? Or what do you think of these, new and improved, amazing limbs? I've learned to deal with it, but for many years it was part of my baggage, carrying that and that resentment I had towards them.
Yeah, I think what you said earlier about, this is normal for you. This is you whole and complete. And that's where, it's really, that's where the challenge is for people with two arms to believe that you don't want to have two arms. They can't believe that you feel completely capable and complete without them. And I think there's all sorts of avenues of life where, we can try and impose our will on other people and it doesn't really suit them, or people have others impose their will. And, I remember as a child myself with my dad trying to, make me behave in a certain way. And I can remember saying to him once, you can make me do it, but you can't make me think it, and but I think we can carry, that baggage and those fears and that need to fit in with us, which at some point we need to give up.
Yes, it's true. And it's something that I think as young people, we have a unique lens, and sometimes we don't understand everything at that young of an age, or we're in a position where we can't take it all in from all perspectives. And so we interpret life or an experience or something that happens in whatever way that we can or are capable of interpreting it in that moment. And sometimes it's taken the wrong way and it becomes a negative imprint on us, a negative experience. And then we later realize, well, we could have seen it from a different perspective, I guess. But I've seen that as well in my own life. And as an adult, and as I mature, I realize that that has happened. And I just doing the best I could in the moment and in my own limited life experience as a young person. And all we can really do in the moment is do the best we can, be the best version of ourselves. But as we grow and mature, we become wiser and understand that we have to be open to other possibilities and open to seeing things in a different way. And it really helps us, I think.
Do you have any strategies or tips or ways of thinking that can help people to reflect on that and, help them set themselves free from their past?
I love that. And I think this probably would segue right into my own phrase that I've come up with called thinking outside the shoe. And it's a way to see a challenge, but people really get focused in on the physicality of me not having arms, and how did I physically do that? How do I get dressed in the morning? How do I brush my teeth? How do I fly a plane? But thinking outside the shoe is how I did those things physically. But I also speak about that in regards to diversity of thought. How are we thinking about other things and people? Diversity in others, diversity in experiences. It transcends the physical aspect of thinking outside the shoe to do things the not so normal way to accomplish the impossible or to accomplish things. And I share that message of thinking outside the shoe so that people can open it up to see from a different perspective and move forward in life. And for me, and again, for all of us, we could let go of our baggage if we could see it from a different perspective. Take, for example, when I think back to those 11 years of what I felt were miserable wearing prosthetic limbs, as an adult, I had to recognize that basis was coming from someone with two arms and two hands, and someone who wanted the world for me, who wanted the best, only the best, and to give me every opportunity. And that was a place of love, while I was miserable wearing them to school every day, they weighed 10 pounds. They made me hot and sweaty. I felt like I was caged in. Those were my experiences. But now I'm able to see it from a point of love and understand, well, perhaps they were trying to do the best for me in their limited understanding of what the best is for themselves. And as an adult, you want the best for a child. You see some child missing something and think, well, I want the best for them, so I'm going to do everything I can. And so coming from that perspective of understanding, thinking outside the shoe, I'm able to come to terms with that situation and be at peace with it, and recognizing that when I advise parents now who have children missing limbs, which they come to me from all over the world, no matter where they're born or raised, because I'm a public figure, and they come to me and they ask me questions about prosthetics, and I'm able to advocate for them, saying, it's great to give your child the choice of having artificial limbs, but never to force it on the child. Let them come to that decision themselves. Or when they come to me with other questions, I can now advocate and be the voice that I wish someone could have been for me. And it's now turned in such a powerful, rewarding experience that I can now make sure that others don't have to go through the same difficulty. And I think that thinking outside the shoe is where it starts, is you have to be able to come to terms and be at peace with it, think outside of what you would have been thinking from your own lens to be able to understand.
There's a lot of really good stuff in there that requires a bit of thoughtful unpacking, I think, So if we think about our minds and how we think about things and how we hold on to past experiences and past pains, a lot of what you're talking about is being able to reframe that in a way to let it go, perhaps, and also to realize that, I know for myself, traumatic things that happened in my past, I have to realize that they can't actually hurt me right now. They no longer hurt, they no longer. You okay there?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have some sunblock that's going into my eyes right now. I had to wipe it out of my eyes.
If you need to deal with that, take the time, because I know how stinging and horrible that is.
Yeah, no worries. I just need to grab a Kleenex from back here, and I'll be right back with you just to wipe that out of my eye, because it's okay. I should be okay now.
Great. So I was just reflecting on, some of my own past experiences, and then there's almost a reluctance to let them go. And, when life gets a bit tough, or you're feeling a bit down or a bit frustrated, sometimes you almost call on them as a reason for not stepping up, or not having that resilience, or as a reason to fail, or go, oh, this is hard, I can't do it.
Yes, I understand that. It's easy access to being powerless, and perhaps being almost like unempowered, and not in control of life and our lives, and the accountability factor. And sure, it's easy to use those, and everyone has a different story. I mean, I have different access to different baggage that I could use, and but I think that, like you're saying, is this reframing. I love the term reframing, because it really helps us. And what happens is that if we give power to those things that have been part of our baggage, traumatic experiences, or whatever, if we give power to it, then it will hold us down. It will bring us down. But if we don't give power to it, then it will make it lighter, and we'll be more likely to move forward, empowered, accountable for our life, and saying, yes, that was then. And I was a young person then, and I didn't know what I know now, but now I can move forward empowered, and I can rise above that. I can take the higher ground and forgiveness again for the situation. But if we can let it go, we are lighter. In the same way, those prosthetic arms that weighed 10 pounds on my shoulders every day when I went to school, the moment I let them go, I was freer. I felt like I was freed out of I was a bird in a cage. And the moment I let them go, I was free, free to fly. And so we can't let those things hold us down.
So how do we notice them? Jessica? How do we stop our thought processes? You know, we get into the spiral of thoughts and feelings and emotions, and each one feeds on the other, and then our thoughts feed on that emotional reaction, and it's very easy to let it escalate and spiral out of control.
Yes, and that's where awareness is empowering, is I think knowing that these are things that are ingrained in us, whether we like them or not, but being in an elevated awareness so that it does take more effort and more energy in that moment to break free of the pattern or break free of what would normally happen as like the trend in our lives of what we would normally do in the situation, and instead being aware that this is something that is disempowering me and I can choose to not do it. It takes a lot more effort. It takes energy. And, like they say, what is it, 21 days to develop a habit or something like that, or break a bad habit. I forgot what the actual formula is, but it takes practice. And in the same way that muscles, the more you work on them, the stronger they become. The same thing with resilience. The more we work on it, the more resilient we become. For me, it was confidence. The more I did things that helped me break free of my limitations that people placed on me, saying, you can't do this, you don't have arms, you're handicapped, oh, you're incapable, you'll never, amount to something. The moment I was able to do things that boosted my confidence, it became stronger and stronger, and it fueled me to go out and do more things, to experience that confidence, to strengthen that muscle, so that I could one day, break free of limitations and say, what, I know the whole world is never going to accept me completely. There will always be people out there who are just not able to think outside the shoe, people who want to give me labels, but that doesn't matter. All that really matters is I'm being the best version of myself possible, and I can only do the best. Even if in the midst of rejection, I have the courage to be who I am. And that's what anyone could probably hope for, is that courage to be the best version of themselves, despite the threat of rejection or despite the threat of other things that are negative. And I think we all work on that every day. Our confidence is something, regardless of our age, we work on every single day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think remembering it's a journey, and it's almost like we think, well, I'm lacking confidence today, and if I do this, I'll be confident tomorrow. And that's not the case, and you might do things for a while and things might go well, and then you fall over and things go wrong, and you just have to take that breath and pause and get back up and dust yourself off and just keep trying.
Yes, keep trying and forgive yourself, because sometimes we have, we're our own worst critics, and we have to be loving enough to forgive ourselves for those moments that we stumble and recognize that, like you said, we're on this journey. People always ask me all the time, what is the hardest thing to do when you don't have arms? And they're expecting that I'm going to say flying an airplane and getting a Guinness World Record for being the first armless pilot who's certified to fly. And I say, oh no, that's not the hardest thing. The hardest thing is that journey to self-confidence, a journey that every single one of us is on. But some of us, it's been a little harder of a journey.
So, we talked earlier about, my work is in health, and my work is in helping people find good health through nutrition and exercise, but, at the moment, mostly through nutrition. And that health is the foundation of our life, really. Without good health, we don't have a good life. And it doesn't matter how much money you make, how well known you are. Once your health is compromised, it becomes expensive, it becomes inner focused and really, really time consuming. So my message is always about, how can we care about ourselves enough to want to take care of ourselves? And I find with my clients often the baggage, and I understand it because I've got my own, but the baggage can get in the way of even wanting to make a start on doing that. I don't know if you have any thoughts.
Well, I obviously, am, since I'm a public figure and I'm on stage, I'm in the spotlight. My health is definitely up there, and people see me as I'm walking around the stage, and you can't be up there and speak and about all these concepts of courage and persistence and look unhealthy. Health is something that's important, and like you said, if we don't have our health, what do we have? And I have to constantly remind myself of that. And self-care is a huge aspect that I always advocate for anyone, because we have to have balance in our life and find ways in which we take care of ourselves. For me, for example, I'm 39 years old now, but I used my feet and I overworked my feet to the point that I have arthritis in my toes and my feet now. And I have to have proper self-care of giving myself rest, going in for a massage once in a while and taking a break. And for a go type of person, that's somewhat hard to do for someone who wants to just keep doing things but recognizing that that's important. That's just as important as going up there on stage and sharing about courage and persistence, is taking care of ourselves. So we can only be our best version of ourselves if we take care of ourselves first. Like you're saying, health is the foundation. So I just think that just being reminded of our priorities, of putting things in perspective, that if we don't have good health, then how are we supposed to help other people? How can we empower others? So making sure that we step back once in a while to really put those priorities and shift our perspective will really help us out in prioritizing our health over anything else.
Because time is always an issue. And I know that myself, it's really easy to think, oh, well, I need to get this work finished. I need to see this client. I need to, do this podcast. And then, the time for some exercise or the time to cook a really good meal, becomes quite compromised. And you have to be quite persistent and insistent, really, I think. Or, I try and just set my intention for the day, because I learned a long time ago, if I try to set my intention for a long way in the future, it didn't work, because it was just too far away, and there were too many things that sidetracked me and interrupted me, and and so it was too easy to lose focus. So I find just trying to set my intention just for that one day, today I'm going to do this.
Yes, that's great. It's just take one little step closer. And like you said, setting that intention, because it's, I know this quote, an elephant can be eaten one bite at a time. Or the famous quote that I love is, perseverance is not a long race, it's many short races, one after the other. So if we just think of these small steps we take to get to our goals and our best self and our health, it's really makes it easier. I like that, one day at a time instead of a big goal far off.
Yeah. And then even that day, sometimes you've just got to break it down into steps, I think. And, I teach my clients, like, what's important now and what's the best choice I can make in this moment, because sometimes you're in situations and you're like, you might be around food and you're like, okay, well, I need to eat something. I don't really want to eat any of this, but what is the best choice I can make in this moment? And there's always the next meal. So just because it may not have been the perfect choice in that moment, you've got, the next meal. So we practice don't miss twice. If you've had a bad time, well, pick it up at the next meal and off you go.
That's great. That's great. You're helping people out. That's wonderful.
I suppose people will have a few questions. I know I do about, and it's challenging not to come back to the fact that you are different without arms, but learning to fly a plane, how challenging, you said that wasn't your biggest challenge in life, but from a physical perspective, how challenging was that?
Oh, it was incredibly challenging, and emotionally, physically, psychologically, all of those components together. I was terrified of flying, and there's a lot of physical components. It's hard enough for people with hands to physically fly a plane. I had to do it by myself and do solo flight, so I really did have to manipulate the controls individually myself. And it was the most physically draining task to be able to learn to do something so foreign. If anyone ever sits in the cockpit of an airplane and you look around and you don't have an aviation experience, you're not like born into a pilot family or had your grandparents who flew planes. But if you sit in there as someone who's just totally oblivious to aviation, it's a very foreign environment. And I was totally oblivious to aviation. And there I was sitting in a plane and making a commitment to overcome all of this weird, strange instruments and all this emotional stuff that I dealt with, being afraid of flying, and the psychological components of self-doubt. Oh, this is not going to work, or I don't know if because you literally have your life in your own hands while flying a plane. For me, it's life in my own feet. So it's this true accountability that comes from it. But you have to work through all the self-doubt, through the emotional challenges, and then the physical demand. It takes 110% of me physically to manipulate an airplane. And I have to be on top of it. Like, I am fully aware, I'm in the zone. I don't ever take a breath or two, just relax. It's just very exhausting to fly a plane physically. And I know eventually that becomes easier over time as you build your hours in an airplane. But at the very beginning, and even still, it's very draining for me to fly. I'm done for the day. I go up and fly for a little bit, I land, and while I'm emotionally celebrating the joy of doing something and being reminded of my own accountability in life, I'm also very exhausted from the experience.
I can imagine. I think I'd be exhausted, being able to fly with two hands. And, I've heard other pilots say that, it's 100%, or as you say, 110% commitment. And there's no real time for drifting off and thinking about what you're going to cook for dinner, or, Yeah. Did somebody feed the cat, or did you turn the stove off? You've got to be really focused. You fly a special plane? What's your plane?
No, I fly a plane from the 40s, but there's nothing special about this plane other than it's considered vintage.
I think that's what I meant, was you fly a
Yes, a vintage airplane, a 1946 415-seat Ercoupe airplane, something designed in the 30s, built in the 40s, and very old technology. So nothing like autopilot where, you can have the plane fly itself. nothing really advanced and modern like most of these planes now that people will fly in to get from one destination to the next. It's a very old school way of flying, let's just put it like that.
What made you want to fly? What was the inspiration for flying?
Well, I wanted to fly because I was terrified of it, but at the same time, I was launching my career as a speaker, and I needed to tell the world you shouldn't let fear stand in the way of an opportunity. And it gave me this huge boost as being known as the armless pilot. And it's a very competitive industry, as some people may understand. Being a speaker, anyone can be a speaker, because it's open to everyone. But also there are a ton of people out there, and having to stand out and be different is important. So I knew that this aviation connection was going to help me stand out in the beginning. And it sure was a great way to launch my career.
And then what about with the Taekwondo? That's something else that you've accomplished and are really good at and have won some championships, I believe.
Yes, I am a 4th-degree black belt in Taekwondo. And in 2014, wow, that was a while ago now, but I really worked hard to earning a state champ title. And I wanted that champ title, not in special abilities, but in my own division, competing with other black belts who are women, but have all their limbs and are not considered disabled or special abilities. I didn't want to go into that division. I wanted to be among women my same age and rank. And I worked really hard for a solid year. And by the end, I got 2014 state champion title for forms, which is the memorized movements, Taekwondo. And I felt very proud of that because I'm proud I did it amongst women that were in my same ranking, and nothing was no special accommodations.
Yeah, that's absolutely phenomenal achievements. And I think you married your Taekwondo instructor, is that right?
One of my instructors, yes, he was one of a few, and he was really, we couldn't be dating or anything while he was teaching me as a co-instructor at the school that I was practicing Taekwondo in. But when he moved on to a new school, we were then able to properly date because he was no longer my instructor.
And you work together now, running your business and your charity work as well?
Yes, so he is now the manager, so that he handles everything and makes me look good on stage, so I can work on the keynote speeches. And then with the nonprofit that I have called Right Footed, he's the aviation chair, so he helps to help with the aviation efforts what we do around the world. And it's wonderful because we can spend so much time together. I know some couples couldn't spend that much time together, but fortunately we can. And we get to travel together, which makes it more enjoyable than doing this, I think, on your as just one person.
Oh, that's absolutely fabulous. So I know it's 10 o'clock at night over there, and you made a really special effort to come and talk to me today before you go off on a tour somewhere. You're heading off tomorrow.
Well, tomorrow we celebrate our 10th wedding anniversary.
Oh, well done. Congratulations.
Thank you. And so for our 10th year anniversary, we're taking a trip out of the country. I won't tell anyone where we're going, but we're going out of the country to have some R&R and enjoy our 10-year anniversary.
Oh, that is fabulous. So before you go, have you got any last words? Is there anything you would like to say to people? Is there anything I've missed asking you this evening?
I thought this was a beautiful conversation. It's really wonderful how you helped to facilitate a wonderful conversation that I think is going to help a lot of people. And I just want to remind people maybe this quote that is one of my favorites by Marianne Williamson. It's, our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our greatest fear is we are powerful beyond measure. as a reminder that we all have these skills and these abilities to achieve things that not many people think are even possible, on an emotional level, on a psychological level, and on a physical level. We can do these great things. Sometimes we just have to be reminded that we are capable and that we can achieve our dreams and enjoy the journey.
I think that is an absolutely wonderful place to leave it. Would you like to tell people where they can find you? I'll make sure that I'll make sure I put everything in the show notes, but it's just nice for people to hear where they can track you down and see more about what you do.
You can actually go to thearmlesspilot.com to get the first chapter of my book for free, and you can order my book there, or reach out to me at jessicacox.com.
And have you been to New Zealand, Jessica?
I love New Zealand. It was one of my favorite trips. In fact, I have a wonderful souvenir from there, and I did the tour of the Lord of the Rings.
Oh, that's fabulous. Yes.
Yeah, so I loved it. Oh, I love the food too. What are those pies called? The pies that are famous there? Meat pies? Is it meat pies?
Meat pies, yeah.
Oh, they were great. They were wonderful.
Our pie manufacturers will be really pleased to hear that. Do you not have meat pies like that in the States?
No, there isn't anything called a meat pie.
Oh.
I was the only place in the world I've been that had them, and they were so fresh when I had them. Oh my gosh, it makes my mouth water. I gotta go eat something now.
Oh, well, you'll have to come back and visit us one day. Well, thank you so much for giving up your time tonight, and it's been such a pleasure to talk to you tonight, and on the other times that we have met and talked. I have thoroughly enjoyed it and really appreciate the value and the thoughtfulness and the thinking that you bring to my own life, and really get me thinking deeply about things. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you for using this platform to inspire so many. And take care and keep up the good work. And I'll see you again at our masterminds.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Bye-bye.